Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mer Herosner podcast, season 3, episode 15. We are live on YouTube. It is Thursday, February 9th, 2023. I'm your host, Vic and as always, I'm joined by my magnificent co-host, Mr. Mike Balyan, where we discuss our great Armenian history, covering different eras, topics, and people. Today's topic is Armenian genealogy and history. There's a lot that you don't know about this, or
I didn't.
We don't know about.
I didn't.
With our special guest, Mike Cunningham, who will be joining us shortly. How are you tonight?
Hey, I can't believe it's already February.
I know.
But everyone does that after New Year's.
Yeah, it's halfway through February.
Like, what? It's already February?
Yeah. 2 more weeks and it's done.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed our last live. That was great. With Vic and Arabian.
Yeah, that was.
Support Our Heroes. And I want to mention again, guys, we have joined up with them. We are trying to help their cause. And those of you who are interested in purchasing anything from our shop, from merherosner.com, we want you to know that if you guys use the promo code Artsakh, you will get 10% off, and then we'll match that and donate it to support our heroes. So you guys, please do that. Our sculptures are a great gift for someone who loves Armenian history, the t-shirts, the hats. So we encourage you guys to do this because we do want to get as much as possible donated to their fund. Another thing I want to mention is Gevork Nazarian will be in town soon. He is coming to the States. And we are excited to have him here.
Can't wait to see the guy.
I want to mention, this is a little bit premature, but I want to talk about this real quickly. We are possibly, hopefully, if everything, all the kind of dominoes fall into the right place, or the cards, I guess, whatever you want to call it. We are starting a new program called Med Talk. Okay, it's going to be a TED Talk type of a thing. We tried that with Vahan Setyan. I know that was a little bit different. It was fast. It didn't happen the way we wanted it, but this is going to be on in a theater-like setting with stage and everything. And Gevork will be our first guest. So we're working on this, most likely sometime in the middle of March.
How long is he going to be in town for?
He's here till beginning of April. So
wow.
So make sure you're following us on Instagram, Facebook. As soon as we have all the details, it's ready. It's going to be a free event. If you're going to be in the LA area, we want you to come. We're going to promote it. It's going to be a great event. 2 hours of just Gevork. I mean, it's going to be amazing. So make sure you're following us. We will let you guys know about this.
The myth, the legend.
Yeah, and he will be on the show as well. So we'll definitely have him live here and cover some great topics. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, he should be here soon. All right. So our guest, Mike Cunningham, he actually watches our podcast or listens to our podcast, and he reached out to us, and it was very interesting. We were like, we need to have Mike on our show.
Like, we need to talk to this guy.
Yeah. And so Mike Cunningham, who's going to be joining us from Austin, Texas via video. Mike is a world history teacher who currently teaches online at the University of Texas. He's also a speech and debate teacher at Del Valle Independent School District. He's also part of the AGB, or Armenian Virtual College. He just received his second master's in Armenian history and was awarded the 2022 Teacher of the Year Award by Anka. How amazing is that? So the list goes on. His resume is there's no way for me to go through it. But everybody, I want you to guys welcome Mike Cunningham. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Hi, Mike.
I'm doing fine. How about you guys?
Good.
Great.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know you're about 2 hours ahead of us. So, we know it's a weeknight. And well, it's a Thursday night. It's almost Friday.
It's not that bad.
Right?
Can't complain.
All right. Well, Mike, I know I kind of read a quick bio about you, but you have a very interesting story. And if you can go ahead and share your story, how you came about the genealogy of Armenia and your own ancestry as well.
Yeah, a lot of people are very fortunate. They know their history when they're very little. Unfortunately, I was not one of them. I was born in Washington, D.C. I lived there about 6 months, and then my parents moved back to Minnesota. And I grew up in Minnesota and moved down here to Texas my senior year in high school. And I met my wife. I've been married 50 years now, so it's been pretty.
Wow. Congratulations.
And, well, yeah, that was good. And I met my wife, and we were going to live the American dream and get a house and everything else like that. So I graduated from college, and then I went up to Southern Illinois University. And my first day there, I got laid off my job as graduate assistant because they had big cutbacks. So I came back to Texas and worked around a couple jobs. I got a job at a steel mill, which is kind of unusual to speak of. And I worked as a steel inspector. And in my job as an inspector, we were working with a lot of other people, college graduates. And the steel job was paying very, very good money in the early 80s. You could easily make $70,000, $80,000 a year. So that was very decent money at the time. Well, we had our one child, and then we're planning to have a second child. And it all happened on a Friday, so I kind of remember this one pretty easy. I went to work that day, and my wife went to go to the OBGYN. And when we came home, we both had something to share. I told my wife that I was going to be laid off. This was not unusual. I think I've been laid off about 20-something times previous to that. But this layoff was going to be about 6 months layoff. So it's a pretty good layoff.
Yeah.
And then my wife said, well, I got a surprise for you too. You better sit down. And she says, we're going to have multiple babies. And I said, well, that's kind of interesting. Babies. And I said, well, 2. And she shook her head and said, no, 3. So they wanted to, this is kind of interesting. So that Monday, she went back to the doctor. They put her in the hospital, and she stayed a little over 2.5 months until the babies were born. And I got a job in the layoff. I got a job right next to it in a restaurant right by the hospital. And we were able to communicate, and I go in and talk. And the biggest thing we talked about was babies' names. So I got very interested in a couple things. Number one, how in the world did we get blessed with 3 babies? We weren't doing any fertility or anything else. It was just natural. I found out 1 in every 10,000 births is that. And I have 6 different people in my generation that have triplets on one of my side of my family. So I got to learn a little bit more history about that, but it really goes by my wife's explain than myself. And so I was writing to some of my relatives, distant relatives in Philadelphia, and I got a hold of people that wrote the Claypool family genealogy. And Claypool happens to be one of the gateway people. And the Claypools go into the British royalty, and the British royalty go into Armenia. I'll explain that a little bit later. So I was telling my wife, I said, oh my gosh, this is so neat, because we're going to try to have something that would be names of families. We didn't know if we're going to have boys or girls, but that's how I originally got into it. I from there, it kind of expanded. I wrote a supplementary textbook on genealogy. Then I wrote a genealogy column. It appeared in about 100 newspapers for about 5 years, and would help people out doing genealogy. Then I taught genealogy classes too. I got my master's in historical geographic movements, and the rest is history.
Wow. What a story.
Triplets in the family, man. Yeah, I heard it's a generational thing where it can be passed along in family trees.
Yeah.
Twins, triplets.
And I didn't know it was Armenian. So that was really kind of an eye opener. And then I could tell you a little bit about some experiences I had later and got into the Armenian community here.
Well, I mean, can you tell us about traditional methods used for keeping track of family history in Armenia?
Yeah, see,
right?
Mike, that's actually a very, very good question for a couple of reasons. And one of the things that's important to understand, Armenia is not like many other countries. When I say that, Armenia wasn't even really a country until May of 1918 and to December of 20, and then back again in 91. So you have to depend basically on the church, not on civil records, which is good. The problem is from 1915 to 1923, the churches were decimated, and so there goes your local records. And because the Armenian church kept most of their records locally, not necessarily when they moved the catechos, and stuff like this, there was a double whammy. So as impossible as this may sound to many people today, it's easier to check your Armenian history 1,000 years ago than it is 120 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. For obvious reasons.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. So it's really very important for people like your age to talk to your families, to make sure you have oral traditions and stuff like that, because when the people leave, when I happen to be of an age to, I remember there would be people that were alive they were descendants of the genocide, or they were actually people of the genocide. Now today, most of those people are gone, and their stories will dissipate with them. So it's very important for us to tell the story.
Of course.
But to say you have some Russian records, but the Ottomans did not really care too much for Armenians, and the record keeping was really bad on the civil level.
Well, we could safely all assume that it was part of the agenda.
Yeah.
Not that they had intel. Maybe they did. I don't know. I don't want to assume anything, but besides the fact that it was definitely a part of the agenda, you wipe out.
Of course.
That
any record.
Of course.
That's the whole point, right?
Yeah, but that's interesting how the churches were the ones that kept birth records.
Right?
Well, I think christenings have something to do with that too, right?
And that brings up a very good point, Vic. If you look at this, the Armenian church, I believe it's episode, I think I have my notes here, episode 24 of season 2.
With Hamlet and Nerskian, yeah.
And they ask about how important the Armenian church was, or something to that effect. The Armenian church, it's so fascinating to understand the history of the church and the history of Armenians, because the Armenian church is so close to the early Christian church. If you take a look at the West separated out baptism, confirmation, first communion into 3 separate deals. The Armenian church had kept it all 3 together. Now, the interesting part is you end up with a lot of people who are lapsed or fallen away. They were baptized, but they were never confirmed. Therefore, they can't really get married into the church. If you have a baptism like that, unlike if a Protestant or whatever to that effect, you can get the records, because if you know the baby was born in March or something, what you look for the records very quickly thereafter. You don't have to worry about 5 years, 10 years, or whatever the records are. So it's important to understand that the Armenian church records were that way. It's very similar to what it was at the very early part of the church. So there's an answer to a previous question, plus gives you an answer how important it is in history as well.
Yeah. I want to thank everybody who's joining us live on YouTube. We are joined by Mike Cunningham, and we're talking about Armenian genealogy and history. Mike, all of us Armenians who are in the diaspora, what can you say? How did the diaspora influence the preservation of the genealogical information?
Okay, that's very important. I believe if you look at this estimate, between about 2.9 million people live in Armenia today, Armenians, and there's between 7 and 10 million in the diaspora. The problem is there's actually probably 10 times that much in the diaspora, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But when you have the majority of your population outside of your country, it's very important for people, and you'll see this in probably Southern California. What is the most popular Spanish holiday?
Cinco de Mayo.
And Cinco de Mayo is not celebrated much in Mexico. It's the 16th of September, which is the Independence Day, when they rang the bells. Father Hidalgo rang the bells in Mexico. Okay, so when the diaspora feels home they want to go back to Yerevan, or they would like to go back to Armenia, or they like to go to Mount Ararat. You speak a lot of times about going to places like that. You have a more longing for it, so they have a more desire to find out the records and stuff. So the diaspora keeps a good, strong, and important part to play with the 3 million people that live in Armenia. And I think you said before, Mike, Vic, when you were talking about Hollywood and making shows, and you said you liked the Ottoman show a whole lot on television.
Yeah.
I think what's kind of important about this is if people really realize how many people have Armenian heritage, we would have a lot more people in this diaspora, and which would actually influence even greater. We'd have more people than the Turks have in Turkey.
It's interesting that you bring up that point. I never thought about that prior. I know you and I have talked about assimilated Armenians. I know we've talked about it in the past with other guests, right? But you've never thought about who and where their generational track might go further back to, right?
Right now, I know it was on Instagram, that famous actor, Joe Manganiello. He is of Armenian.
He's of Armenian
who would
descent.
have thought, you know? So, again, I know, I call them the sleeping cells,
It's an interesting way of
and
putting
it's not, and it's not just here. I think it's worldwide because, think about how many, after the genocide, especially, even prior to the genocide. Listen, there's been multiple genocides before the genocide that we keep talking about. There's been a lot of massacres. And during those massacres, a lot of Armenians did escape as well. They didn't stay there. So they did branch off to Europe and even came here. So again, you're talking about if one woman met another nationality and got married and had kids, are you talking about, let's say, in the 1800s, right? Okay. Nowadays, those grandchildren are so assimilated, they have no idea where their roots are from.
I've met a ton of people from the East Coast that moved out here to LA. Quarter Armenian, I don't know, whatever number you want to coin to it, right? Said, my grandmother was full Armenian and then married a so-and-so Irish man or whatever, especially on the East Coast. There's a huge Irish population, right? These types of stories pop up all the time.
Very interesting. We got some new people. Levik's actually joining us. Hey, Levik, welcome to the show. First timer. I want to thank again everybody who's joining us. Hope you guys are enjoying this conversation with Mike Cunningham.
It's a really interesting question he asks. What's the legal, if there's such a legal thing, what's the legal percentage you need to have to be a certain race? What is it, 1/8 he's asking?
Well, if you look at the census for this last year, you claim whatever you want to claim. So I put down 21 different nationalities because I know of 21 different countries that my relatives came from. So what happened, and I believe I forget what episode, so I should have told you. But remember when you were talking about Aryan, the word Aryan and
yes.
There's another word that people have, but it's going to be very important for tonight's discussion. It's the word Caucasian. Caucasian in 1785, and it has a denotation, I guess, of something being bad because they try to put it into something else. But if you think about this, if Armenia is the cradle of civilization, which I do believe it is, and I think Mike and you and Vic have both said we used to be taught about Rome, you taught about Greece. But I guarantee you more people probably have Armenian heritage when you look at than the Roman or Greece heritage, which is going to be kind of crazy. And as we all know, most of the Byzantine nobility have Armenian heritage very easily. So when you take a look at that, it would stand to reason that if we are called Caucasian, that we came from the Caucasus Mountains.
Or the region, right? We've mentioned, you and I have talked about this a few times and had small discussions about it, how Mesopotamia is just an umbrella term.
Of course.
Mesopotamians was an umbrella term. It's just like, I know I've mentioned this, I know you've talked about this. It's like the United States of America. What's really an American, right? We're just a mixture of so many different cultures. It's the same thing with when we refer to the Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia. They were a whole bunch of different people that occupied a massive area.
And you know,
and we happen to occupy a bunch of those massive areas.
Northern part of
northern, but then you can go south into Mitanni and so on and so forth, and yada yada yada.
Yeah. What really gets to me is the fact that whatever historical documentary you watch, it is always Mesopotamia.
Yeah,
even now, it's
an umbrella term. It's just an umbrella term.
They don't even take the time to really research it. But obviously, we know there's other sources involved behind this to make sure that it's not mentioned as the Armenian Highlands. And that's what the point of us doing all this stuff is, to correct it.
Yeah. Well, it's good topic for conversations and digging into further.
Yeah.
In 2001, there was a term called edugicide. And edugicide, it was later applied, I believe, in 2022 in a paper about the education. And edugicide is a genocide of education. And when they try to take over education and they teach you improper things for you to learn, and then do it deliberately, that's how they keep this thing going. And it's exactly what you were saying, Vic.
That's an interesting term that you mentioned to us, edugicide. I'd never heard of that until we spoke to you about that, and I was like, wow, that's a fascinating term.
Speaking of edugicide, I want to post this. So this QR, not a hashtag. I kept saying hashtag last time. This QR code that you guys see on the upper left corner, if you guys scan that, that will get you to a kind of like a form that Mike has put together, and it talks about edugicide, and it goes into the entire genealogy. It's a very interesting. It's very long, so we're
going to be discussing.
We're going to discuss some of those things tonight. I didn't want to like post it on the screen because I think it's not going to be helpful. But go ahead and scan that QR code for now, and it will. You guys can download it.
Download.
Yeah, and go through it. It's very and talks about what Mike is doing, and they're doing some great work, which we'll get into a little bit later on. So I want to make sure that everybody is aware of that.
Can you discuss the role that the Armenian church played, as you mentioned earlier, and about preserving some of those genealogical records and how they went about it, or what processes, if you have any information on this?
Yeah.
Like how did they go about preserving these in such a turbulent portion of the world?
Well, okay. It's really kind of interesting because I don't think there's been a real time of peace when it comes to the place of Armenia for many, many years. So the church was basically the center point or the center focal point for most of people's lives. Unlike what we take religion today, many of us take religion today as something to go to church and come home on Sunday. But the Armenian church was basically the center point for most of from 301 when Saint Gregory, helped convert the Armenian people. And then what's really kind of interesting, within 4 generations, his family marries into the family of the king that put him into the pit. This June the 10th will be the feast day of when he gets out of the pit. He's, and if you ever get to go there, and I guess claustrophobic. But to make to make a kind of interesting story about this, the church itself plays such a role because you had for many years, or from the time of until Ashot comes back and reestablishes for about 500 years when they were still part of Persia. They were just an island of Christianity amongst completely surrounded, except in north by some of their cousins in Georgia, of Muslim. And all the records and stuff were kept, and records are kept very well in noble families. Noble families, who begat, and were kept immediately. It's just the people who may not have that type of tradition. Now, it's kind of strange to think, you're going to think, well, I came from Armenia or that. I may not have any noble families, but when you take a look at it, we're going to talk a little bit later, most of us will have some noble family of some sort in our heritage. I know I don't.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to tapping into that conversation in a bit.
Yeah, okay. But just get back to the church. I know Father Tadios, my spiritual director. He's a retired priest. He used to work in the eparchy up in New York. He's in New Hampshire right now. And he would explain, and his father was a very young boy when the genocide took place, and they marched him out in the desert. And he'll tell you some very, just heartrending stories. But they would, even people when they'd be marching, they were taking their Bibles, they were other things, and keeping the family records because they wanted to preserve them. But the church has a long tradition of trying to do that. People, trying to help out for long periods of time. So I think the church is very important. And go back to one more thing. It's so important to understand exactly, if you take a look at 450.
Mike, can you repeat that part? I think you're having a little bit of internet connection issue.
It might be some Chinese weather balloon interference.
Hey, no joke. Anyways, I was trying to tell you, in 451, Armenians couldn't send any delegation to the church council at Chalcedon. And so they were kind of put out, and that's why the Armenian church is in the Oriental church, not in the Eastern Orthodox church or whatever. Because Armenians were fighting the Persians at the time and thought that was a little more important. But the church has done some tremendous things on that. I think that's probably the best I could come up with. Go ahead.
It's interesting. I never thought about that. It's one of those things that kind of escapes your mind when you're thinking about all this stuff, right? Yeah. Like, okay, how do they keep birth records? I didn't, right? Back then. And the fact that he's telling us that churches kept birth records, it makes sense why, right? But it never crossed my mind. But
if you think of from royalty, right?
Sure.
Even to common folk, everything you did was through the church, right? If they were pregnant, I'm sure the column what do you call it?
Yeah, they were all clergymen.
Just that the women that go to the home to help give birth. I forget the midwives or whatever. Midwives, So I'm sure the midwives were connected through the church. So if there was a birth, they had to record it, and then there's obviously the christening involved. So all this stuff is done through the church, right? That's how it was. And this is going back from the first church that was built, from Gregory's side.
Never considered it. I don't know. I guess it escapes your mind sometimes because you're thinking about so many other things when you're diving into.
I think the church played a very big role than we can imagine because we're so used to the government now. Keeping records.
Of now, right? We're used to everything now.
So it's hard for us to comprehend that, okay, well, back then, even though there were royalty kingdoms, the king wasn't keeping records.
No,
it was, the king was just the king.
Time for that.
Hey. So yeah. Moving forward from that, I wanted to ask you, Armenian names and naming.
Oh yeah.
The convention of it, I guess you can say. What kind of impact does it have on the research of genealogy as far as our Armenian lineage goes?
Okay, you had brought up a very good question, and let me try to explain and go. Okay, now, what does McDonald's stand for?
Please enlighten us.
The yellow arches? I don't know.
No.
I know there might be some symbolism to it.
No. Son of Donald. Mac was Scottish for son of.
Okay.
Okay. Like you drink O'Doul's, son of Dool. Okay. You see, Henry.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's Polish, SKI, they put the SKI after their thing would be a son of.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, so when you take a look at this, last names are really not really last names. My name is Cunningham. Okay, my father has to be, that's where I get my Armenian roots. But my relative that came over from County Cork was Miles Franklin. When he landed in Flemington, New Jersey, he was given the name Cunningham because he came from the Cunningham farm. Okay, so Cunningham has nothing to do with the family. Okay, in Armenia, if you go back to ancient Armenia, even though we will see some people with IANs and stuff like that, they'll stop at some point and that would just mean son of. And so you could trace it back to a son of, or they would go by family names. So you end up seeing is so-and-so, so-and-so, and they'll say the country's name. And like in the Bragatuni family, they will have like 4 cadet areas. So they have 4 different groups of people. You might have the same names in the same era. So let's say you and Mike are about the same age, and let's say you are cousins. You could be Mike, and then you would have the same name, and then you would just be of Glendale or of another city. So it doesn't confuse the person anymore, but it's confusing to us now because everybody goes by last name without realizing how they got their last name. I can tell you some horror stories. My 3rd great grandfather came from Norway. He stowed away on the boat when he was 13 years old. He didn't have tuberculosis, but back in those days they called it consumption. He had this cough. So when he came into try to come through Ellis Island, he jumps off the boat and swims ashore to New York City. Okay.
Wow. That's awesome.
Okay. This is cool. And so I have relatives that swam here to the country illegally. So, that's kind of a cool system. And they could not understand his English. So they called him Sam because his name wasn't Sam. And the only thing they could get out of him, he lives in the hills. So his name was Sam Bakken. Bakken meant hills in Norwegian. So they would just give names to people as they came through. So you would get totally butchered. I have some relatives that lived on the hill. And one were Bakkens when they lived on a little bit of the hill like here. And the Dokken Bakkens lived up higher on the hill. So they're called Dokken Bakkens, but they were first cousins.
Wow.
So you have this confusion when you go back and chase anything in genealogy is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cluster you got to go through to try to actually get to the true names of where they come from with their last name. You're Mike of
Las Villas, Erevan, because my mom and dad were from there. I don't know. Does it go that far back?
I don't know.
Let's figure it out.
It's really interesting.
Since we're talking about how some of these, our genetics might be connected to royalty, I know you mentioned something about this. I kind of want to ask you about that. What role did the Armenian kingdom of Kilikia or Cilicia play in the genealogy of European royalty, including, I don't know, do you want to fill us in? I'll leave that up to your surprise.
Okay, I'll backdate you a little bit. Okay, if you take a look at Reuben was remember he vanishes off of central part of Anatolia. I won't call it the name of a T, but it was central Anatolia. Okay, and he comes down and goes in Cilicia, and they start the Reuben dynasty, which comes into the kings there. He is a Bagatuni. And you can trace back his family, and he marries into things like this. The best things I could ever tell you, this is like so exciting. Their intermarriages of the Bagatuni family, these people were like the Kardashians or of their day. They would be married they would trade in, and everyone would marry another famous person. So once you get into one part of the family, it just opens up like a spider web, and you're related to everyone. Well, it works so well that in Kilikia, okay, they marry a bunch of French people. The French people marry into the English people. The English people, and then you got some of them will get married into some of the Crusader families. The Crusader families marry into the Polish families, and so you look at Spain, you look at France, you look at England, you look at Poland. Every single one of those royal families will have Armenian heritage from the descendants that go back to the Bagatunis.
Well, we really quick, Mike, let me pause you there. We talked about one of the episodes. I forgot which one it was. Pardon me. We talked about how during the Holy Wars, when Kilikia played such an important part in being hospitable towards the Crusaders, right? A lot of the more noble families married off their daughters to some of the Templar factions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we made mention of this.
Yeah.
So this might have actually been bigger than what we talked about.
I don't, was it the episode of Cilicio that we did?
Might have been.
Okay.
Might have been.
All right. It's a possibility. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, go ahead.
No, you take a look, and we'll show it later when we go back to St. Gregory, and you'll see name too. Most people not. I think I froze again. Most people do not understand the interrelationships. King John for the Sparta actually borrowed money from his cousins and signed Sparta with mostly his cousins. All these people are so interrelated that in a couple generations they marry again. So you could just go back, and the same is true with. I'll show you the family here in a second. How you could trace back to that. Yeah.
Speaking of kings, can you? I mean, this is what really kind of, you know, when we first talked, obviously, when we had a Zoom call before, you know, this show and everything, and you told us about it, the stuff which blew our minds. Can you discuss the connection between Armenian genealogy and Edward III, King of England?
Yeah, through his wife, and there's several ways, and I think it's one of the things we're about to show you later on. It'll show you in the graph form pretty quickly. But it's through the French that you'll end up having all his descendants will have had relations right directly back to.
Do you want me to bring that on the screen?
Yeah, if you want to, that's fine.
Okay, give me a second. This is, by the way, I'm going to put another QR code for you guys. Now, this is, well, you can download this. It's a PDF. You can download this, click on the QR, or not click, scan it. I don't know if it's clickable. I don't know if people can click on it. But yeah, so let's go to you guide me, tell me which page. I don't know if people can see this clearly.
Yeah, this is probably a good page right here. And the reason why I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about St. Gregory. St. Gregory got a pretty good documented genealogy. Now, it goes a little bit, history will have stories about him and his father and how he went to Cappadocia and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But you got who begat who, and you go all the way down the first column there. And then it branches off to two different ways. And on the one on the left, is actually, it goes all the way down here, which you could go down to the last couple of ones. If you look at, you see a king of Poland, a king of Poland, a king of Poland, a king of queen of Poland that, a princess of Poland that marries the king of Castile. Then the Castile marries Aragon, and then they marry into provinces, a part of France. And then they marry into Savoy, and Savoy end up with a lot of people in Cilicia later on, another generation. And then this is where Eleanor of Provence, who is the Henry III. And then that's a direct line of how you could go back right to St. Gregory. Now, on this other side here, which is kind of interesting, this goes through the Byzantines. And the Byzantines are just completely all over the place when it comes to different Armenian heritage. So you could have one or two lines. Here, you would actually have two or three lines going right back to Armenia. So instead of just having, and this is just one group, a person could be, and let's say that you think that you're English, or you think that you're Spanish, or you think like this. You could have several lines going back. The thing which is kind of interesting here, if you take a look at here, it says Anna Byzantium, and Louis the Blind, a king of Italy, and emperor, Holy Roman Emperor. That gentleman, they had a child named Charles Constantine. Now, this Charles Constantine is Constantine is a strange name for a French person. Normally, they would think it would be Greek or Latin in there, and there's a historical debate whether that's actually their son or not. This other one is pretty good. So you're always going to have some controversy, but most of the people here will accept that. Then go straight down again, and you could go right into the kings. If you go to the next page, it starts showing the interrelationships between going back to Edward and here. Now here you go to the Constance of Provence, and you can see King Henry I, the king of the Franks, and he marries Anna of Kiev, of the Kievan Rus. And then you got Philip I of France, and then you got Hugh Magnus there of France, and it goes down, and you can start seeing the Clares, the Beaumonts. All these people are that. But notice here, if you can, look at the shields. What do you notice on those shields?
Well, Cilicia.
Yes.
Yep.
And so you were going to, if I did nothing else now, but you go through here and look at these shields are exactly the same shields that Armenians had. So you can tell that there is a much better relationship.
So I mean, if you're talking about cultural exchanges, intermarriages between, I guess let's call it somewhat significant nobility families or people of power or whatever you want to consider it of the time, right? Can you shed some more light on that? What you just showed us with let's say some of the European royalty and Armenians marrying or commingling with them.
Yeah.
You know,
if somebody will download those and just take a look, I think I counted 20 something odd shields or crests that would be very similar to the Armenian shield or crest, which would mean that there's not only contact, but people knew that there were contact, which is very fascinating. Now, if you take a look at common people, the common people normally married within 5 miles of where they lived. Okay. The royalty will marry like halfway across the world. So, so you're not going to see too many common people up and leave because they didn't have the opportunity to get married. However, in the royal family, they would marry people out to what would be advantageous to them. So what you're actually seeing is this is how diplomacy took place. This is how mediation took place. They did this instead of war. So they were doing this. But as they did this is fascinating. Now, I didn't include this, but I kind of like to talk a little bit about this.
Sure.
And this is goes to the Askruni and Bagatuni families when they intermarry, I think around 900 AD. Did you know that it started in 300 BC in Korea? The Korean family moves to China, marries into the Tang, into families there. That family moves in and goes into India. Indian family goes into Persia. They marry into some exarchs. Okay, and we'll talk about exarchs in a second. Then they marry into the Bagatuni family. So the Bagatunis make this claim that they go all the way back to Adam, and that the funny part about that is a lot of people say, you can't do that. Well, if you study the Jewish history and you study exarchs had kept great family records on purpose, and that's how they proved their genealogy. So once you married into the exarch family, you could actually literally go back to where they came. So Armenia is in the middle of the Silk Road. Okay, we are in the center of the world. Without realizing it, we had cultural interchanges from China all the way back. Many of our families came from China as they came, especially the royal families, because they kept on moving westward and stuff like this. And you could traditionally look through that. I could send you a bunch of stuff. It's just enough to really get people interested.
Absolutely.
You probably don't really think about it, but if you're in the middle point, and Armenia is really in the middle point, you would assume that, okay, we've had trade. We're also going to have a bunch of
all the commerce and whatnot, and just it being more or less like a hub. It was a stop for everybody. Right. Travelers who were in merchants and etc.
Very interesting. Again, I want to thank everybody who's joining us live on YouTube. I want to let actually later on, whoever's going to be listening to this, the same QR code that people are able to download these forms or the PDF will have the links in the body of the podcast. So those of you who will be listening later on, you guys can download it yourself, and it's very, very interesting. Mike, can you discuss the most surprising findings in your research connecting Armenian genealogy with Edward the Third?
Yeah, I did something since we discussed. I've done a couple things I tell you are really surprising. First of all, it shocked me that I found out I was Armenian when I was 27. I mean, that was the initial thing. It was kind of interesting. Then my biggest thing, I guess you would say at this point, is just how many people are related. And I did a video type thing, and they could take a look. It's like 26 minutes long. What I did is I put 300 people together, and I asked them, what was the question? What do they all have in common? And what they all have in common is that they could have relatives traced back to Armenia, but they would include people like Nathan Felon from the Rookies. It would include, it would include Winston Churchill, include Diane Spencer. It would include a lot of people that you would not think: Barack Obama, Beyonce.
What?
Yeah. Okay.
Really?
Take a look at that video and then start looking at everybody's nose and their eyes. And all of a sudden you can start seeing there are similarities. Now, here is the shocker deal. If allegedly we are millions and millions of years old, think about this a second.
Well, yeah, the odds of...
We would have common ancestors, but our common ancestors would have been millions of years ago. I'm telling you right here and right now, we have common ancestors, but they're within 1,000 years, and many of them could be traced to a small little country today that we didn't stand up for in 1915. Now, if we would have had proper education in 1915, Woodrow Wilson was Armenian descent. He married 2 women. One woman died in the White House. He married Edith. Both of them were of Armenian descent. William Howard Taft and his wife were of Armenian descent. And
That's
Theodore
crazy.
Roosevelt was of Armenian descent. But we decided to sit there and twiddle our thumbs and do nothing and not help out, even though we knew that was good. If they had known, would they have made a difference? That's my question. That's why I think it's so vitally important for us to actually get the word out there with shows like this, to get people interested in studying their own history, because then we can change history for the future.
Mike, I want to ask you, which will segue into my next question, is how easy is it for any individual to get their hands on this type of information? Like, let's say, okay, we hear about our historical figures, our ex-presidents and whatnot, right? A lot of people won't, and I'm not trying to discredit humanity, but a lot of people won't dive into, I wonder where this person was from. What's their historical background, their genealogy, and whatever the case is. But how easy is it to, let's say, I want to dive into Teddy Roosevelt's genealogical history, right? How easy is it to get this kind of information?
I can share it with you right now.
Sure.
There's a website, famouskin.com, and you can get every president there is. A girl out in California in 2012 was a project, and she put down that 43 of the 44 presidents at that time were related, and also to King John, and got quite a bit of stuff, was in all newspapers and stuff like that. Later, Trump goes through Scotland and ends up in the same place, and then they find out a line, and Biden in the same case. So coincidentally, I don't know if people have thought about this, Charles Darwin is an Armenian. Okay.
What? What?
Okay. Now,
I'm not laughing at you. I'm just shocked.
No. Okay. I just want to.
No, I'm not laughing at you. I hope I'm.
Right. You can go ahead and laugh at me. This is good.
That's no. I'm not laughing at you. I'm shocked. This is the first I've ever heard of anything like this. Please explain.
Okay. Charles Darwin wrote The Origin of Species. If you believe what he said, that man, transformed into something else. Okay, great.
Okay.
And the problem would be is that if we actually really did this, we would be so old that we would have to have millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of more people on the earth that never existed. Okay.
Yeah.
So you go back to what I termed that edgicide. We have, since we've gone to this idea of origin of species, we have had to try to take away and try to not really get people to question, because all of a sudden, how could we have more people today than we ever had before? How could that be possible to have that many people back then.
It's a valid point.
It is a extremely valid point, and people don't question that. We're questioning the wrong things.
Well, I mean, we can talk about mainstream media being a major resource as to why, but let's not dive down that rabbit hole.
I'm talking about right now is that, we question, we put our faith in science, but what is science? Science is actually questioning. And today, if you question something, you are canceled. So therefore, you shouldn't question. Okay, then that's not really science either. All we're trying to do is in genealogy is the science of who begat who, and you trace back like that.
Yeah, which actually has records.
Yeah,
there's records. Of course. These are documented pieces.
Right. Yeah. I'm not trying to.
No, not at all.
Mike, let me ask you. When we talking about they were of our obviously probably 99% of them don't know, but to claim, if that's the case, we can claim pretty much.
Well, yeah, I have a follow-up question to what you're asking.
I'm just asking, at what point would they go okay, if that's the case, I'm so many different, nationalities or heritages. Do you think if you're saying let's say, for example, I'm trying to word the question the right way so it comes out better. So let's talk about Barack Obama, for example, right? Yeah. You're saying that he has Armenian heritage. Well, I mean, he can, it might be so minute, that portion of the Armenian that
really far back,
that
somewhere,
he can be okay, whatever. So what, how do we get them to appreciate and get excited about that? That's where I'm trying to get to, basically.
Yeah. See, that's where it's really important for history to come in, because Barack Obama's, has extremely important noble families from Armenia. Okay.
Yeah.
So he should.
For example, can you give us some examples?
Yeah, he would go back into the Bagatuni families too. Okay, because when you take a look at it, that's how all these people can get related, because they all married off so well, and they kept on marrying till we get to his relatives. So we may not know about so and so that died in 1920. But we would know something about this that took place in 900 simply because the records were kept, the records were good, the records were taken to another country, and we go that route like that. So what we should do is try to look at why aren't we not teaching? I think Mike's brought this up before. Why are we not teaching world history and showing that Armenia as a cradle of civilization is much more important than Greece?
Yeah.
By the way, they say, Athens started the democracy. They did, but the democracy allegedly was you had to be owned property. You had to be 21 years old. You had to be male.
Yes.
It's not really what we call a democracy at all.
No, you had to be a part of a certain type of class to be able to participate in voting and whatnot. This is the way it was done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, and I know you said this before, but I'm thinking that we should stress our commonalities, and then we have a lot less differences than we would have, because we have a lot more similarities when it comes to genetics than a lot of people think, especially when you start stumbling on these ideas that we were so closely related not that terribly long ago. I mean, I used to do this in my classes a lot of times. I said, well, we had 30 people in the class, and they said, well, we could be related. And this one girl says, well, I have Armenian roots too, and found out, we're cousins from way back and whatever. I mean, more than likely, depending on where you came from, and if we wanted to do a challenge and I come back later, I could find out how I'm related to you. And I think that'd be a good challenge.
That'd be awesome.
So you come back and say, okay, here you go. You take a person that you've never seen before, and he is your 25th cousin so many times removed or whatever.
See, that's what I was going to ask was concerning Darwin. Let's just use him as the example since you mentioned him. Yeah. How far back was that traced to him having some sort of, I guess, the end point or beginning point, if you will? I guess consider me a layman when I'm asking this question. The end point or the beginning point of the Armenian in his genealogical lineage.
Yeah, it will go back. It depends. I'm not as familiar. I just did check on that, so I put him up there because I know he goes back to King John. Mm-hmm. But if he goes back to Edward III or whatever, okay, let's take a look at that. There is a group out there that will believe that Isaac II, he's probably the sorriest Byzantine emperor, and he was the one that was blinded. And then when on the Fourth Crusade, they came over and took over. Okay, and they put his son in. And there's the reason why they attacked Constantinople instead of supposed to go down to Alexandria or something crazy. Okay, so if you take a look at his daughter Irene marries the king of Sicily, and then he dies, and then he marries the son of the Holy Roman Emperor. He's killed in 1208, and she's killed shortly after. But her children are married into so many different families that it goes crazy. Well, her name is Irene Maria, or they go by Maria, but her name is Irene. Her mother's name is Irene. That Irene has been kind of debated in a couple of ways. First of all, they think it goes back to David, the builder of the Bagtuti family of Georgia. If that's the case, then his last tie to any kind of Armenian person would be in 1208. Does that mean, because she would be like 2 generations away? Got it.
So that makes sense.
So it's either going to be king, through 1000 to 1200 would be the last of the last people who would have real connections to Armenia. And by this time, it would be so, you'd say, well, that's just a small percentage. But I'm talking about many lines, because all of a sudden,
course.
You look at, so when you do this DNA, I'm really, I don't know, I've seen some people in here that say, oh, I took that 23andMe test. They did it with identical triplets. And they came back, each triplet had a different family.
Wow.
So I'm not so sure necessarily all the time. I'd rather go back and try to trace it another way than just that, because I think there's some mix-ups in the 23andMe.
Wow.
Nothing's perfect, though.
Of course. Of course.
There's got to be a little buffer for mistakes or
each
child came different.
Yeah,
that's
child,
really interesting.
And they're identical, which would be impossible, because that'd be one egg was split 3 ways.
3 ways, yeah.
So did you? This is 23andMe that did this?
I don't know if it's 23andMe. One of the two. I was reading a story about that, and I was sitting there. That's I've always been kind of hesitant, because they always say like I'm 2% Armenian or something like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't show you anything. I'd rather say who my relative was, because that way I want to study that relative, and that's what we need to start talking more about. We need
of course,
not just a number.
Of course. I wanted to kind of shift towards the historical events that took place, like such as the Crusades or the Mongol invasion. How do you think it affected the Armenian genealogy, especially within the European royalty?
Yeah, the Mongols. Let's go to the Crusades. The Crusades play a positive and kind of a negative role. Let me explain the positive form. There are 2 areas in which the Crusaders didn't really understand that well. 3 areas, actually. I don't think they understood Constantinople or the Eastern Roman Empire very well at all. But they didn't really understand Cilicia, and they didn't really understand the Maronites in Lebanon either, because they couldn't understand why there were Christians still in the Middle East at that time. So there's a kind of a thing. Now, what we don't know, or hasn't really been taught to us a lot, who was the last king of England that spoke nothing but French?
It's a really good question. Was it King George? No.
King Richard.
Really?
The first king to speak only English in court was King John, his brother. And King Richard was actually the last person to speak French. The Crusaders called the people from Cilicia and the people from Lebanon, they called the Crusaders Franks. Why?
Because they spoke French.
Yeah.
Because they spoke French. And if you go back to England, remember, half of English holdings were in France at that time too. Remember, Eleanor, Richard's mother, was French, and that's where they end up getting some of the Armenian relatives and on her side of the family, because they marry into the French too. So when you take a look at it, they called it Franks. The French was adopted in Cilicia at court. They started taking actually starting to turn towards more French customs. They did bowing and kneeling instead of the other stuff. All that creeps in. You start seeing noble families marry into to the French families like that too. So there was a lot of interchange that you never saw. Also, at the you heard the Hagia Sophia, correct?
Yes, of course.
Oh, very good. What was the last divine liturgy that was done at the Hagia Sophia? Do you know what it was?
No.
It was actually a Catholic Mass.
Interesting.
Really?
Yeah. And what's really kind of crazy, they were doing a unified Mass, and the story goes that the two priests disappear into the wall. And they're allegedly going to reappear. It's a story, but they
some sort of,
have that. So, but there was a talk when the king's there, and even the emperors towards the end to try to get some help, that they were going to try to reunify the church at East and West on the Western base. Now that brings up another question, which I'll try to do history since we're kind of talking about history and genealogy.
Yeah.
The Armenian church was under its Antiochian. Antioch was named after one of the Seleucid kings, Antioch, that founded the city. It had the largest Jewish college or big school of study there. That school almost disappears overnight, and it becomes a Christian school. Do you know who the first bishop of Antioch was?
No, fill us in.
Peter. Peter was bishop at Antioch before he was bishop at Rome. Now, because he was the first bishop at Rome, they call him the Pope. So if Antioch never fell to the Muslims and later Arabs, would Antioch today be the seat of Peter?
Yeah.
Would the Armenian church be part of the Antiochian thing? There's some historical questions that you could really you could sink your teeth around.
This is some deep connecting dots.
Talk about history changing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because look, we've who was it that we talked about Antioch a lot? Was it Hamlet? We talked, or I forgot who it was, but we talked about how Antioch was such a integral part of battles that occurred throughout the centuries, like way early on, because of its location.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wait, I think it was with Vahan.
I think it might have been with Vahan.
Yeah, it might have been with Vahan. Yeah. Well, also Antioch, we've covered it in some of the episodes we've done.
And whatnot.
When we're going through those periods,
Antioch's been battled over for centuries.
Yeah. That is so interesting.
Antioch's a city by a river valley that controls it, and it's a very important city. But to make matters, it was a big religious center, and it became converted to early Christianity. Remember, the early Christians were basically Jewish people until until Paul started going out and getting different things. And remember, the apostle that went to Armenia was later skinned to death, and you see holding his skin on his arm in that famous statue.
Wow. So
we had two apostles go through Armenia at the very beginning. So when Saint Gregory reestablishes the church in 301, the church had been established there for many years. It's just been on the it had to be resurrected again. And that's when he wrote his Divine Liturgy. And his Divine Liturgy is very similar to the Byzantine. But you go back to a little bit about Antioch. He was when he fled from Armenia, and he was held in Cappadocia when he was young. That's when he's under the influence of these Antiochian priests and stuff, and he got to learn quite a bit of stuff. So much of the Armenian church is based on Antioch, so it's called an Antiochian church.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So interesting. I want to thank everybody who's joining us live on YouTube. Those of you in the chat who are having the conversation, we can see you guys. Later on, once we're done with kind of our questions for Mike, you guys feel free to ask any questions. This is a very, very fascinating, interesting topic that we're talking about. Again, I want to tell everybody who you can scan that QR code and download the PDF, which will have the lineage of, and you can actually study yourself. And try to find your connection to royalty, I guess, right?
Yeah. God, I'm gonna do some research on my end. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, one thing is kind of neat. Let's say that you are 7/8 Armenian, and one of your family married an English person. You may find out that you could not trace your family, 7/8 of your family in Armenia, but you might could trace that one person from England to Armenia back. So when you start looking at cradle civilization, if we're all Caucasian, all this stuff starts making sense because it all fits together. It's kind of been hidden that this is very palatable at this point, because at some point it wouldn't surprise us that we should all be Armenians.
Can I, Mike, before you ask your question, I see that brings up a thought of, okay, so if all these royalties, knowing that there was Armenian connection, lineage, right, married off each other, was it kept a secret? Was there something about being Armenian they didn't want to know?
Well, to add to your question, was it kept a secret now? Because back then they may have known.
Great point. There you go. Right? So can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah. A couple things. Number one, if you take a look, I love history, so I'll talk a little bit back. There were 5 major cities: Rome, Constantinople, Antioch, Jerusalem, and Alexandria. There's only one city that was left after the conquest of the Arabs, and that was the city of Rome. So when many of these people, especially the Cunningham people, move in, they were trying to leave a lot of the eastern part alone and adopt Western ways, because they were seeing the East as kind of dying because it's being consumed. So at some point they decided to, just like your friends that said they were Irish Catholic or Irish from out east, they come to California, you become a Californian, So as this is what's happened to America. When they ask you, who are you? You are American. But if you go to Armenia, who are you? You will tell what village you came from. You would say, your family. You would go like this. In America, we just don't do that. And I think say we're Americanized. We kind of got Americanized in Europe. They just kind of put everybody together and you just became that person. So you kind of lose your identity. That's why education, that's why family history, that's why Armenian schools, that's why all this stuff is vitally important, because
of course
you need to continue this on. We're talking about Ertosh right now. It was a province of Armenia for every year. It's not average. It's Azyrs are late comers to this deal. They'll hoom and holler and change everything around, and people actually believe it. I think there was some people let go today at ABC. Some people let go today at MSNBC. All these networks and stuff are laying off people. But if you listen to even BBC the other day said that Artosh was a breakaway province of Azerbaijan. That is terribly, terribly wrong, but people will just accept it without questioning it, and that's what we need to stand up.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing as, let's say, for instance, they uncovered something in Turkey. Let's say they found some sort of relic, something, right? They're going to say modern day Turkey. They're going to say Turkey. Like, for instance, with the earthquake, I'm sure everybody's seen what's going on. What was that castle that collapsed in? It was, I forgot what it was called.
That was built by what's his name?
But that thing's been there for 2,000 years.
2,000 years.
Who occupied that area?
Yeah, Turkey. And I believe there was ancient Turkish castle.
Ancient Turkish castle collapsed because of the earthquake. Perfect prime example.
Yeah.
Who built that castle? It wasn't the Turks.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not the Turks.
Yeah, and it was fortified to try to stop those people from coming, at the border.
Yeah.
It brings up a whole nother idea about why you need to defend your borders.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask, let's move forward a little bit, since we're about 1,000. No, don't worry about it. Since we're about 1,000 years ago right now. How did and this is a question that was burning for me, and I'm sure a bunch of our people are probably maybe thinking about this, is how did the Armenian genocide affect the ability to trace genealogical records?
Okay, it does.
Simple question, but there's probably a lot of avenues to this.
Oh yeah, let's go previous to genocide, April 24th, 1915.
Sure.
Before that, Armenians were pretty much treated as second or third class citizens. And you got to remember that most Armenians were fairly well off compared to many of the people who were living in Anatolia at that particular time.
They were.
And unfortunately, there was a lot of enmity and envy. And so record keeping was not done so much on the civil records. And if you had civil records, they wouldn't really be kept a whole lot. So everything was kept in the church. And then many of the churches were totally destroyed. You can just see decimated, even and set in some really bad shape. Or people were forced into at divine liturgy and closed the door, locked the door, and lit the thing up. I mean, records burned up. It was absolutely horrible. And then you had, which even worse, you had the Treaty of Sevres. And the Treaty of Sevres gives land of Eastern Anatolia to the Armenian Republic, which sounded really good. The only trouble is Mustafa Kemal decided that he and his nationalist Turks didn't want to obey the Ottomans. They said the Ottomans weren't the actual rulers. They knew better. So they just basically tore up the treaty and then tore into Armenia and took over whatever they wanted to do. Again, reestablishing not only the genocide, but putting all the records and stuff for what could have been saved, completely done away with. America knew about this. Ambassador Morgenthau told Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan and a bunch of other people about it, and we still didn't do anything. I mean, from a humanitarian issue, this is terribly bad. I can't see, but this is happening today too. It's not only happening today in our stock; it's happening all over in the Middle East. The genocide of Christians in many of these countries is amazing.
In some of the African nations too. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Nigeria. Yeah. I mean, not to get into that topic, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in Africa about Christians and some of the churches being attacked in some of those countries.
But
I mean, look what's happened in Israel.
Well, there and a bunch of the Ethiopia specifically and Nigeria.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, we're talking about records. Basically, you forget the civil records. Ottomans didn't really keep them much. And probably on purpose, like you said, the churches were pretty much decimated. You could never really tell how many people died. Maybe even well over 2 million. When you
a lot of those numbers are estimations.
Yeah,
you just don't really know, and you can't know because the accurate census of Turkey, they didn't really even count a lot of the Armenians in the first place. So they wanted to download that. And they said that they did, I forget what was the last census, 1908, somebody will probably tell me.
Wow.
But that had like pretty close to 2 million people, or I don't have my notes in front of me. But that was undercounted, I'd think, a whole lot. So
Unbelievable.
So if you undercount the census, I'm sure you're going to undercount the records or just hide the records.
Well, of course. But again, I mean, not to dive into another avenue, but who was going to ask post genocide? Let's just call it that. Who was going to ask? Well, we want records. We want numbers. What did you do? How many people did you displace? They didn't care. No one cared.
Well, there are quotes in the New York Times that Talat Pasha was actually asking the New York Life Insurance Company to try to get insurance policy.
Yeah, I remember this.
So I mean,
yeah, that's well documented. Well documented that he did that.
So they know, they have an idea. But when you go to the Jewish Holocaust, I don't know, y'all may know this too, but they compute the numbers that they put in on people's arms and stuff are actually computerized. So they actually kept count more than they did it in Armenian genocide.
Yeah.
So without the ability for computers, it's just all estimates and records. It's to their ability to lose those records. They don't want to keep those records.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're talking about
the methodology obviously changed, and I'm not going to blame it on that, but methodology changed over what? Between World War I and World War II was about 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah. 25 or 30 years.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, you're about right at about 20 years, to be honest.
Yeah.
But they use box cars, they use rail cars in the Armenian genocide. They just improved it in the Holocaust. If there wasn't an Armenian genocide, there probably wouldn't have been a Holocaust because they're kind of patterned after that.
Well, Mike, besides that, I'm sure, again, I'm not talking about the Holocaust there, but the Germans must have kept some sort of count of how many individuals were brought in with those boxcars, and they may have used those documents to be able to estimate or come close to an estimation, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the Germans were pretty organized people.
Yeah.
I mean, to give them that much credit, you can.
Yeah.
They're very organized.
They couldn't have pulled off what they did if they weren't.
All those trains that came in over all those years, somebody was keeping a log sheet of this.
You can't do what the Germans did if you were not organized.
Whereas with the Armenian genocide, as we all know, this lasted over decades. And we were, people were taken out into the desert. Nobody was keeping count.
Here's the thing. The way the Turks did it was, it wasn't really the Turks themselves doing it. What the Turks would do is they would come and grab the Armenians, right? Yeah. They would put them in chains and get them out to the desert. But what they would do is they would give the Kurds weapons, horses, this and that, because they had already, by that time, they had the propaganda of the Kurds and the Armenians that lived together was fed so much that the Kurds were actually second-class citizen as well. But the whole idea was, okay, let's get the Kurds to hate the Armenians more, and then we'll deal with the Kurds later. But at least they were kind of close in embrace, right? So they would give them the weapons, and then the Kurds are the ones who marched them through the desert.
Yeah.
So it was them who were doing the killings, most of the killings.
But again, at that point, they washed their hands clean.
Of course,
No one's going to.
But the Kurds also had a incentive at the end of it, right? Of course they did. Because they were going to get to take over the homes of the Armenians, the businesses of the Armenians, the wealth of the Armenians.
Or so they were promised.
They were promised, and then they saw how that ended.
And they were going to get under Wilson's 14 points. They were going to get a Kurdistan. And Kurdistan was going to be right next to where Armenia was, but
which they're still fighting for to this day.
Exactly right.
Yeah, which they're still fighting for this day.
Very interesting. Mike, what kind of, I guess, advice or tips or guidance would you give to someone who is starting to research their genealogy and how to find out if they have Armenian heritage or lineage?
Good question.
Yeah, very good question, Jay. It would be a couple ways. First of all, if you were Armenian and you knew your Armenian heritage, I would go and check with as many of your relatives as you can to get your records and stuff like that. And then also the Armenian church here in the United States has a lot of records, and you can get a lot of records on the internet as well. If you are English, Irish, Scottish, Polish, Spanish, even a couple other things we would mention. Kievan Rush, if you want to look in that, you can see. You could just trace back to one of the gateway relatives, and the gateway relatives is pretty easy to establish. Yeah. And then that goes right into kings, and you can find out exactly how you fit by using these codes up here. So if you can get to a gateway relative, then you can fit in. I was reading today, and there's a couple of challenges I want to do before we leave. But
sure,
one of the things I was going to try to look at or think about, everyone knows the Kardashians are Armenian, right? Because Robert Kardashian came from. But had you ever thought about this? Kris Jenner the mother of Kylie and
yeah.
Okay, they could be Armenian as well. She's English, Irish, and something else. And they were saying on Kim's mother's side, it goes back to some kings in Scotland. And I didn't have enough time to look it up today, but I was kind of just hunting around in case it ever came back. You could actually make a case of having people who are married to somebody who was Armenian, and then they'd be part family or whatever. And you could be Armenian as well, but they just say, well, I just go back a couple generations and my people came from England, or my people came from this. I'm telling you, you need to overlook that, go back deeper.
Keep going.
And you find out that, oh my gosh, yeah, we are actually much more related. And if that's the case, that brings up some really interesting history.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, if you don't just stop at, oh, there's the Armenian, and then that's it, you quit.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. There's gotta be something further than that. Like, why would you want to stop? It's a valid point.
Yeah, you know, when you think about it, and there's so many, you have really good episodes about, you know, Armenian history and how important it was, and Heratus and stuff like that. And I want to go and emphasize this. Really, you think of it as Armenia being one of the cradle civilizations. We had to come from there. So it only makes sense that we could trace ourselves back to that same place.
As far as you can possibly go.
Yeah. And then you couldn't go any further. Now, we may see people from other cradle civilizations, like I said, because we were on the Silk Road, so you can see people moving in. So I may not look like I'm Armenian. I sure don't look like I'm Korean. I don't look like I'm Indian. I don't look like I'm Persian. I don't.
Your last name's not with an IAN.
My last name's not with IAN, but my name was stolen. I mean, I was given. We were crop sharers on somebody else's land, and they got our last name. So forget the last names. I think we have to go deeper.
Yeah. It's so crazy. I mean, I know as far as my family's concerned, I've maybe gone back about 150 to 200 years, just the origination points.
Yeah.
And that's it.
No,
so I'm guilty. I'm guilty of stopping somewhere. I mean, look, but I am Armenian. Yeah.
Well,
but going further back.
Yeah.
Like, what if I kept going further back?
For me, I haven't tried to do what Mike is talking about. But as far as me trying to put my family tree together, I've got the furthest I've gone is my great grandparents.
Yeah.
No, great grandparents. Sorry. But anything, after that.
Yeah, same. It's great grandparents that I've traced back through my mom's side, not my dad's side. That's how far back I've got. I think maybe 200 years.
Yeah.
And that's about it. That's where I've stopped. Right. I haven't thought about anything else. I haven't looked into anything else. And again, not through any testing or whatever. Just family word of mouth records. Let's call it that.
Mike.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was saying I wouldn't stop, but not each line. You're not going to be able to go back real far. But when you find a line that you can, you just go back that way, and you can see, and then you can actually trace yourself back. So, like myself and my wife, I grew up in Minnesota. She grew up here in Texas. We met in college. We got married, but we both have families from the Basque area of Spain. So at the same time, so
really?
We go back far enough. She doesn't have the same interests as I do as far as I guess doing this, but we could find out that many people are even closely related, more so than that. And that's what really blows my mind is, as a teacher, our kids are being taught, that we are millions and millions of years old. And you have what's called, at least we have a common ancestor. So if you think about this, we would go back and back and back, and then we curve, and then we come back to, we believe, like Adam and Eve's story, we come to the one person. But you go like an old-fashioned bell curve and be here. Well, if we're millions of years old, it would go like this, and we'd be way over here. Okay?
It would be,
Not 800 years.
No. No.
You cannot tell me that we could have, in this audience, let's say we have a couple thousand people doing it, okay, whatever. And we probably could pick out 30 people that are relatively maybe 7th or 8th cousins. Okay, to prove my point, what do Dick Cheney, John Kerry, Barack Obama, and George W. Bush have in common?
They've ruined our country.
Well, they probably have. Okay.
They all like cognac, Armenian cognac.
No, it's bad joke. Go ahead.
Okay. No, they all are cousins, and they all have Armenian relatives.
How so? How far back?
Well, that's what I was going to try to tell you. They have these common relatives about, either 800 or 1,000 years ago. And what the bad part about it is we all have these common relatives. Yeah. Why aren't we, tonight we should be screaming and throwing stuff at our computers here and saying, my gosh, why have I been told these stories all this life? Is that we are millions and millions of years old and we could not possibly learn all this stuff, I'm starting thinking, hey, wow, we need to change our, put our faith maybe in something else other than what we're putting our faith in.
That I agree with.
Yeah, I think our fathers had pretty strong faith. If you lived through some of the times that they lived through, they had to have a lot stronger faith than we do. I don't know if we could withstand some of the stuff they did.
No, they were a different breed of human beings back then. These people lived through world wars and Vietnam and Lord knows anything else.
Well, even before that.
Well, even prior to that. Yeah, well, the carnage and turmoil that sometimes we discuss, it's like, wow, was the world really like this back then? It's just, some of the things, it was almost like a flip of a coin to be able to survive some of these timelines, some of these eras.
Of course. Right? I mean, we can't even imagine the things they went through. But again, I want to thank everybody who's joining us on the live chat. We have Mike Cunningham joining us from Austin, Texas, live. We are talking about the genealogy and history of Armenia and some amazing connections.
Some unbelievable connections.
You said 43 out of 45 presidents have Armenian.
I wouldn't.
What's really interesting is I wonder if they knew. Churchill, obviously, with the cigar and the cognac, obviously. He knew there's no other way,
Okay. If you take a look at Churchill, take a look at that video I sent you and start looking at these people's faces and you can actually tell that they actually have similar facial features.
I want to mention to everybody, after the show, if you guys go on YouTube, search for Mike Cunningham's channel, he has that video up where you guys can, it's like a 30-minute video and it's just showing the pictures of everybody who has Armenian lineage. So it's very interesting. Again, Mike Cunningham, just search for him on YouTube. You'll find his channel and you can watch it there. I also want to tell you guys, if you have any questions in the chat, we're getting close to about an hour and a half. We'll probably be ending the show soon. But if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask it in the chat and we'll ask, and Mike will see it and we'll ask it for.
Post some interesting questions.
Do you have a question?
Yeah. So I wanted to know, and this could be a very simple question, but the importance of it is what matters, right? Is how does Armenian genealogy connect individuals or just any culture, not just ours, to their cultural heritage? And how does that identify them or dig deep grassroots to finding their identity, right?
Yeah.
This is the basis of genealogical research individually.
I have a good answer for that one, Mike. Do you read the Bible?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you see the Bible as a bunch of stories or just is that really somebody's relative?
Oh, no, the book is alive to me.
Okay. Well, good. You take a look at Maccabees. Okay.
Yes.
How many? Okay. In the Apostolic Church, Armenian Apostolic Church, there's 3 Maccabees. In the Catholic Church, there's 2 Maccabees. And in the Protestant churches, there are 0 Maccabees.
Yes.
Okay, now, what's wrong with that?
Interesting question. I never put any thought into this.
Put it this way. The Maccabees talk about that when the Maccabees were actually, I think it's Aramaic for the hammer. If I go back to that. And they were leading the revolt against the Seleucid kings. Okay. And they were and they had desecrated the temple. And when they take over the temple again, they burn the oil, and that's where we get the Festival of Lights, or we get Hanukkah from that. Okay. Now, if if we did not have the Maccabees, we would never have had Jesus.
Yeah.
Because why would Jesus have come back if they hadn't restored the church? Because there wouldn't be any Jewish people left.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that has to be important. So when you take a look at it, you need to put importance of things and study things. And that's the same thing. Like if you just take that out, oh, that's just a story. We're just going to throw that away. Or that's just this. That's not important. Okay. When you start defining that, and Martin Luther decided that, he levitated, and it's a whole story about that. He said, this isn't important enough to be in the Bible. Well, if that's not important enough to be in the Bible, then Jesus would have never come here because there wouldn't have been any Jewish people to come to.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you take a look at it, the same is with our family histories. This has to be just as alive to you, so you explain to your offspring, okay, this is what this king did. This is what this person did. This is what the people did. This is what the battle that they won and stuff like that. So if they don't get it in world history in school, they learn about the other things. They learn about Rome. They learn about Greece. They learn about all this other kind of stuff. We're going to have to teach them at home.
Absolutely.
That's such a great way of explaining. That was actually a perfect way of explaining it. That was wow.
I mean, the further back you go, I mean, it's just like all the stuff that we've been learning on this journey of ours, right?
Yeah.
It connects you even more. Not that we were disconnected, but it connects you even more and more.
Connects
and
you
more.
You start seeing things a lot clearer,
fully grounded in it.
Yeah. Again, you and I, as much as we can say we're history lovers, we didn't know half the things we've learned through this journey we've been on. And
besides that, what I mentioned earlier, like a couple minutes ago, about finding out my mom's side of our family tree back about 200 years, at least my estimation, I would have, and I'm going to be 100% honest with you, I would have never asked that question if it wasn't for this podcast.
Yeah.
Like for what we're doing.
You're welcome.
I would have never asked that question. I would have never asked my mom, okay, hey, tell me about your grandparents and their grandparents and yada, yada. Where were they from? What happened here?
I wish my grandparents were still around so I can pick their brain, but unfortunately they're gone. Mike, is there anything else you want to share? Anything specific?
Yeah, a couple things. I'd like to make a couple challenges. One is I'd like for everyone, if they haven't subscribed, to subscribe to your channel. I think that's very simple.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Second,
awesome.
I'd like to, if you hadn't already belonged, I would like for everyone to join the ABGU, American Armenian Armenian General Benefit Union. Real good organization out of New York. Actually, it's goes deep into that, and they have a special project that's been up since 2009. The AGBU AVC, Armenian Virtual College, and Armenian Virtual College is offering free college Armenian history classes.
Yeah,
and they are absolutely excellent. It's really easy.
This is through AGBU, right?
Yeah,
AGBU, but it's AGBU, and there's what is it actually?
AGBU AVC.
AVC, okay.
AVC. You go to there. The people have been really, really nice. We've set up schools all around the world working with them, and I had 7 of my students get a diploma from them this last year. I liked it so much, I ended up finishing a second master's degree with them, and I wrote a master's thesis. But the price is right. It's free. But more importantly, this is something that you could actually take and explain about your family. And if you love history, you love history about Armenia, you will study this and be very, very good.
Yeah.
This is so important to happen. And these people are absolutely wonderful. I don't think we'd have near the problems that we would have today if more people took classes to understand. And I think you get this real strong idea about the sense of community, of the Armenian community, even if we're left in 800, 2000. We start looking at it, some people left Armenia and went to Lesser Armenia, and then some people left to go into the royal families. But this diaspora has been growing and growing since the 800s.
Yeah.
I had a funny story. I think I told you some other time off camera. I found out recently, what was it, like about 3 or 4 months ago, that I had a great grandparent from my dad's side that actually left Armenia or was it Syria? Because there was a lot of Armenians in Haleb or Aleppo way back then. Came to the U.S. in 1912 and stayed here for like 20 years. Stayed here for like 20 years, worked all sorts of odd jobs, and then left and went back.
Yeah,
I was like,
it was for him.
Like, are you kidding me? Like, I've had a great grandparent who came here over 100 years ago, man.
Came and made some money and went back. Again, I want to mention that's AGBU Armenian Virtual College. If you guys go ahead and Google that. Again, Mike, you said those are free courses, right?
Yeah, they are free courses.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It was designed by Dr. Zervan. He is located up there in San Francisco area, but the college is out of Yerevan, and my major professor was actually at Yerevan State University, was writing my thesis with. So.
Okay. Speaking of Yerevan, Mike, have you been to Armenia?
No.
You've never been?
Unbelievable.
Wow.
No. Let's go, man.
Yeah.
Come on, Mike, let's go.
I would, seriously, that's one thing I'd like to do. I'm very strong. I'll admit this. I'd like to get my second citizenship. I'm applying for a second citizenship from Armenia. And I would also like to be, if I so honored, be an honorary consul here in Austin for Armenia.
Yeah. Well, in order for you to get your passport, you have to go to Armenia. So one way or another, you have to go. Yeah.
Well, we are working with Dr. Zervan and trying to work through the embassy to meet with them in April. We're doing some student mediations, and this is kind of interesting. And we're doing this project in the state of Texas. We're doing a geography of geography of genocide. We're doing a public professional development on March 25th. I'm doing it. And then on April 24th, we're going to put it out. Then at the end of that week, we're going to Washington, D.C., and we're proposing 4 different contests. And we're including some people from Armenia and Artosh with the YMCA. And we're doing a student mediation where the students are going to be the Azeris and the students are going to be the Armenians. And they're going to sit down and try to do the border dispute, which is kind of interesting.
It's interesting.
Learn both sides. And then we're also doing the moot court, which is like they did ICC, where they're taking it to the ICC court. And we have that court case too. So
and the winner is going to be a guest on our show.
Yeah. Oh, well,
what?
Yeah,
not the guest meaning like we're gonna have him on the show.
Okay,
not a full-on guest, but we're gonna have him on the show. Yeah,
this is fun. Is this going to be streamed in any way? I just have to ask, I guess, since technology kind of.
We're piloting it with South Africa in April, and then in June the 10th, on the anniversary of St. Gregory getting out of the pit, we are going to do the international competition on that Saturday, June the 10th, and we'll stream it. And then we'll be glad to have the kids whoever wins.
Yeah, send us the stream so we can we'll post the stream so people could watch.
Whichever kids win, we'll have them as a short guest on our show. So just to talk about their experience. And Mike will provide us all that information. We'll share it with everybody. Mike, before we end the show, we kind of stopped doing this, but we got to bring it back.
Yeah, we got to bring it back.
I wanted to ask you the time machine question. If you could ever go back to any time period in history and experience it, what would it be?
Wow, that's a very good question. I'd almost like to say 451, and I'd like to go with the Armenians are battling the Persians. And I'd like to hear the speech that they gave to really, gin up the people, because actually speaking, they know they're going to a suicide attack. But they still do it. Or conversely, would be the Battle of Thermopylae. But since I'd rather push the Armenian one, I'll say the Armenian one first. But there are some times in history that you are called to do things extraordinary. And St. Khan was one person that did something extraordinary, and without his putting down his life, we might not be talking, about this today at all.
Yeah.
It sparked the revolution.
And talking about that, if people learned and another challenge you need to actually look at your history, so that way you can buy statutes and help your program out and stuff like that. But you're not just buying statutes; you're buying your own history that you can teach and see every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's
helping a good cause. That's what it is. You know,
well, I mean, all of this stuff is discussion piece, and just spark your interest. It's just like a movie. When somebody makes a timepiece or time period movie, right? Whether it's based off of a true story or not, like people do end up researching and looking into things.
Look at Mike's situation. The fact that Mike found out that he has Armenian heritage, right? Yeah. Look how involved he is. Look at the thing as a teacher, right? Look at what he's doing. Yeah. And he didn't have to do this. He didn't have to do this, but
his story.
But that's what I'm saying is like, imagine how many people are out there that might have Armenian heritage. And if that sparks them to go, hey, what is Armenian? Let me go learn it. And then he'll find out about the culture, the hospitality of where we come from, everything we've gone through, the hard times, the good times, and again, what we're battling through right now with the falsification of our history. It's so important. People are not understanding how serious this is. Yeah. If you guys think that just because there's wars happening, that's serious, you have no idea when you have outside sources who have this agenda and you guys have no idea how powerful this agenda is to completely falsify our history, where we will become gypsies.
Yeah, nothing but like history itself.
Start taking this seriously. We didn't do this just because it's for fun. Yeah, we love it, but there's a mission behind this. Yeah. We have to tell our stories. That's why I keep saying, all you rich people out there with you're spending your money on stupid things, invest it into storytelling. I don't care what kind of a form it is. It could be movie, documentary. There are amazing, creative kids out there who
have amazing stories, guys. We have amazing stories.
Screenwriters, producers. Get to them, invest, and tell our story. You're not going to take that money with you to the grave.
Hey.
A lot more substance.
Hey, Vic, something that you mentioned before and you just mentioned now so passionately. Take a look at the pressure that one government can put on our government because they have 80 million people or whatever in their area, allegedly. Mm-hmm. We have probably maybe 75, 80 million people living in the United States that could probably claim some sort of Armenian heritage. If you talk to producers like that, and if you got those people involved and they actually got to see that, how that would actually change what we're talking about today, that'd change the dynamics completely.
Looking at it from that standpoint,
television,
You talk about another. Sorry, Mike. I was going to say, talk about doing a documentary with people like Mike about the genealogy of Armenian history, and then having it on a major platform, right? Imagine how many people who watch that, just like us. You could be sitting on Netflix or Amazon Prime, whatever, watching some document. Imagine if something like that is done, and somebody who's sitting there is watching this and going, maybe I might be Armenian. Yeah, starts doing their own research. So, that's the point. Again, is to constantly tell this is the time. If we don't do this now, I guarantee everybody. Yeah. I guarantee you guys, in 10 years, it's done. It's done. Forget about our history. Forget about our history. Yeah, that's how serious this is.
If you just look at the Artsakh War, 94, Artsakh was fairly large. And then in the 2000, when they aided by the Turks, it shrunk to where it is today. If you spend another 10 years, what are you going to do? Go down to nothing? We need to stand up.
It's somewhat on its way there.
Well,
unfortunately.
If people stood up, if Biden stood up, if a lot of our politicians stood up, they would realize that, hey, they're killing their own relatives.
Somebody should remind Biden that he has Armenian heritage.
Someone needs to remind Biden he's Biden. I mean,
I'm being
smart.
All right. So, anyways, the point is that it is time to get serious. There's so much we can do. We're using this platform to inform people, to get it out there. Those of you who like our podcast, you guys watch us, listen to us. tell your friends about it. Get them on. Start listening. We're getting so many emails and people reaching out to us from different parts of San Diego in the house. By the way, San Diego has been definitely.
Some guys' comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. We're working on some stuff, like I said, and earlier I mentioned about the Med Talk that we're going to be doing, which is going to be like a TED Talk type of a thing. Mike would definitely would love to have you on as well.
Would you be interested in joining in, Mike?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Awesome. He'll take a trip up to Glendale over here or Burbank, passing, depending where we end up doing it. But that's in the works.
Yerevan West.
Yerevan West. There you go. Nice. I like that. Nice. All right, Mike. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. We truly appreciate it. He'll be back. We're gonna do a special.
He's got a lot more info.
Yeah, we're gonna do another episode with Mike about Educide, which is something that is very important, and we'll cover all those the topic and how important that is as far as Armenian heritage goes. Everything.
Mike, really quick, is there somewhere that you usually post things or videos or something like this that people can reach you out again if you want to go ahead and plug that?
Yeah, I have a couple YouTube channels. We have a couple school channels. I'll send you all those so you can post on the deal.
Sure thing.
A couple on Facebook as well. We're trying to work with a lot of schools. At one time, we had like 1,200 teachers all around the world. And we had like 40 different schools were doing AVC classes and stuff. So the concept is we're trying to work to get the ministers of education to accept and to college transcripts. Right now, AVC is accredited by the Armenian Ministry of Education, so it's a fully accredited university. But
got it.
I'm thinking that learning for learning's sake is really what we need to do here. And I could not recommend more highly some of these Armenian courses. I think they have 8 of them out right now. It's interactive, and you get to learn a tremendous amount.
That's appreciate
it, because I got to learn all about my relatives.
That's amazing. Again,
I hope this sparks a lot of the people that have been listening or will listen.
We'll watch. People. Obviously, we get a lot more people watching later on.
This really sparked a little bit of a research bone inside of you.
Yeah,
and tell them to share with their friends that they think are non-Armenians, because I don't think there is such a thing as a non-Armenian. I just think there's fractional Armenians.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah, we have a saying in Armenian. It's basically the whole world is Armenian. They just don't know it yet. So,
hey, what? How smart can they be?
Yeah, that's true.
Again, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us live from Austin. I know it's getting late over there, so I'm sure you want to go get some sleep. We'll talk to you soon in the next coming weeks about doing another episode. So again, thank you so much, and we wish you a wonderful night.
Peace be with you too,
Mike. Thank you. Thank you for what you do.
Guys.
God bless.
God bless.
You guys too. Bye.
Thank you. All right, everyone. That was Mike Cunningham joining us.
And he's
live.
got a lot more information.
Yeah, that was.
This is just the tip of the iceberg. When when we initially spoke to him.
Yeah,
man, he's got a lot of info.
Yeah. Hope everybody enjoyed this. Like I said, we're gonna have Mike back on Educide. It's a very interesting topic that we need to cover. I want to mention next week we'll be covering Osho III, the Merciful.
Is it just me and you again?
It is just me and you.
Wow, you had to whisper that into the microphone?
Yes, just you and me.
This is weird.
So that'll be next Thursday, and then February 23rd will be with Tom DeWall. It'll be the interview. Another
really interesting conversation.
By the way, everybody, that interview will be pre-recorded, but we'll be airing it live. We'll be with you in the chat. We'll be there to answer any questions. So we'll be with you, and that will be the author who wrote The Black Garden. And that's something I highly recommend everybody to go and get that if you can. It's a great book. There's the audiobook version as well. You can listen to it again. It's called The Black Garden. It will definitely give you a better idea of everything, how this whole conflict, and the first one started during the Artsakh situation. Follow us on Instagram. Again, we have a lot of announcements that are going to be coming up, so make sure you follow us on Instagram. As I mentioned, we are working on this Mer Talk program that will be live in front of an audience. No, we're not going to air that for free on the thing. It's a free event, so you need to get up and come when we do announce this. It's going to be great. We're looking for a spot that can possibly hold about 500 people. It'll be a theater. Again, we'll announce it as soon as we have more details. It's going to be sometime mid-March, possibly on a Sunday, so you have no excuses to say I had a birthday to go to. Besides that, let's see what else. I won't mention. It's a little bit premature. Okay.
Jess is asking, what was the website for the free courses again?
The free courses, it's AG. Well, I don't know the exact website, but search AGBU. Virtual online college.
Yeah, Armenian
virtual college. Sorry, Armenian virtual
AVC.
AVC, Armenian virtual college. Yeah. So definitely, it's through AGBU. Yeah. which is great. Let's see what else. Anything else am I missing before we call it a night?
I think that was it. I think
we covered and those of you who got a hashtag, again, we'll post the link.
It's a QR code, man.
I keep saying hashtag. Damn, what is my obsession with hashtag?
Were you obsessed with Twitter in your past life or something?
No. It's because I keep handling the goddamn, what do you call it? The
QR code, dude.
Instagram posts, and you never do it, so it's me with the hashtags. All right. What else? There's something happening. Anyways, it's true. It's premature. I don't want to mention it. Anyways, I'm so excited. We're doing so many side projects that I'm so excited that I want to announce all of them. But
you must lock away the secrets, son.
Yes.
Lock away the secrets.
All right, everybody. Again, follow us on Instagram, Patreon. We had a new Patreon, Seda from San Diego, who joined Seda. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
truly
Seda.
Appreciate it. She chose the King and Queens, which is $20 a month, supporting us. That money is going to go towards a very, very special project that's coming up. I will announce that as soon as it is confirmed. This is going to be a big thing that we're doing. Again, this is another project, so a lot of things are happening. If you want to support us through Patreon, or you can become a member through YouTube. You can click on that. It says member join. It starts at $2.99. I'm sure you can afford $2.99 a month to support our little podcast that's becoming bigger and bigger by the day. So besides that, we want to thank everybody who joined us. Was there anything in the chat that we want to answer?
Thank you to everyone for your unbelievable comments, guys.
Thank you.
You guys are fun and you guys are awesome.
Yeah.
We see a lot of the same faces. Tell your friends, tell your family. Come on down.
Yeah. And subscribe, hit that notification bell. So when we go live or post videos, you guys are notified. So again, we're going to call it a night. So as we always say, respect one another.
Love one another.
Until the next episode, take care of yourselves.